In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the front calipers on this GMC Yukon. Let's get started. Take a 22mm socket and remove all 6 of your lug nuts. With those off, remove the wheel. Now with the wheel off from the backside, locate the brake hose banjo bolt. That's the 11mm bolt that holds the brake hose onto the caliper. I'm going to break it free and then snug it back up. The reason for doing this is because with it broken free now, I know that it will come off later once the caliper is already off the vehicle and I don't have to fight it while it's swinging in the air. Now with the wheel off, if you look on the back side of the caliper, you'll see 2 19mm bolts. So it holds your caliper onto the bracket. So put a wrench or a socket on here and break it free. Take one out, but I will leave it partially threaded on to hold the caliper while I take the top one off. Now carefully take the bottom one out, set it aside, pull outwards just a little bit on the caliper. That'll usually squish the pistons in and leave you with just enough wiggle room to pull it off. And now you're going to want to set it right on top of this upper control arm here. Careful of your ABS wire, you don't want to damage it, but this is going to be a secure place because you don't want to put any pressure on this brake hose, and since it's attached with the bracket here, it can't really go too far. Now you can pull the brake pads out, just wiggle them, and they should come out. They do have a little stopper on both top and bottom, so sometimes you'll need a little bit of a prying tool to get these out of here. There we go. Now you have 2 18mm bolts to remove to get this caliper bracket out. I'm going to leave that one partially threaded in so I can take this one out. Pull this one out completely, hold the bracket, finish removing this one, and then once this is out, you should be able to pull the bracket right out of here. Now on the new caliper, take some silicone paste and apply a thin layer right here where the anti-rattle clips go. This is just so that it can prevent rust in the future. Don't put too much because if you do, it'll actually squeeze out onto the rotor after you put the anti-rattle clips on. So now that you've coated it, put this on. I'm using silicone paste, by the way, brake rated silicone paste so it can withstand higher temperature. Don't use anything that'll melt with the heat. Okay, snap these on here. They should sit nice and flush up against the bracket. Of course, we're going to do the same to the other side. A nice thin layer. And the anti-rattle clips. Now I'm going to pull the slider pins out and I'm going to add some grease to them. You always want to check them at least. There's actually quite a bit of grease on these, so what I'm going to do is just add some to the inside of the boot. This is going to act as a reserve of grease further down the line when it needs any more. And I'll just put the leftover with my brush right onto the slider pin. Work the grease in there, press this on, and get the air to come out of the slider or the boot. If you just squeeze the boot and press the slider in, that should get all the air right out of there. Oh, and the excess grease. Perfect. So this one's all set. Wipe off the outside, and I'm going to do the same to this one over here. There we go. And add the extra on the pin. Okay, wipe off the grease that's on the outside, and on this one as well. Now this is ready to be put back on the vehicle. Take that brand new caliper bracket, slide it over the rotor, put the bolts in, snug them up. If you have light duty suspension, you're going to have to torque these to 170 foot-pounds. If you have the heavy duty suspension, these two get torqued to 221 foot-pounds. I have the light duty, so 170 is the torque for me. Now let's put the brake pads in. The inner pad is going to have this extra piece of backing plate here because of the flat design on the caliper bracket. The outer pad is not going to have that. So take these, put them in at an angle, and then push them in. Same with the outer one. It should slide in smoothly, and once it does, it'll have little tabs that lock these in and springs that push them apart. So they should pretty much do this, and not come out. Now take your caliper, slide it over pads, get it to line up with the slider pins, just like that. And then take the 2 bolts, start them in. You want to make sure you start these by hand so they don't cross thread. Snug them up. If you have the heavy duty suspension, these 2 get torqued to 77 foot-pounds. If you have the light duty, they get torqued to 74 foot-pounds. I have the light duty, so these are going to get torqued to 74. If needed, you can use a 19mm wrench and gently hold the slider pin. It does have a cutout for a wrench. Just make sure you don't damage the boot as you do that. And 2. Now take the old caliper with an 11mm socket, remove the banjo bolt, let that caliper drain. Keep in mind the hose will at this point start leaking, so we're going to have to move quickly. You don't want to drain that master cylinder. If this banjo bolt doesn't want to come off, that means the inner washer is stuck. That happens often. To fix that, all you need is a pair of pliers, grab onto it tight, and then turn the bolt. Okay, I got it off most of the way. Oop, there we go, that's off. Now you can take the bolt out completely, set that aside, inspect the end of the hose here where it clamps onto the caliper. Mine looks good, it was just a little bit dirty, so I wiped it off. Now I'm going to take my new banjo bolt. I already have a washer on it. Make sure the hose does not have any washers left on it. Put that through, put another washer on the other side, and slide that right onto the caliper. Start it on by hand. As we tighten this up, I like to let the caliper fill up with fluid, and to do that you're going to want to open up the bleeder screw, use a 10mm wrench, crack this open, let that air come out. Once that's on, we're going to bottom this out and torque it to 30 foot-pounds. That's it right there. If for some reason you can't torque it, give it about 1/3 of a turn after it bottoms out. Basically, you just want to crush these 2 copper washers, and that's what creates the seal between the hose and the caliper. Wipe off any excess. To begin your manual brake bleed, make sure that your brake master cylinder is topped off with clean fluid. Then you're going to want to have a second person in the car pumping up the brake pedal as you open and close the bleeder screw. So after a few pumps, have them hold pressure on the brake pedal and open up the bleeder screw. At this point, air and fluid will come out. Once the pedal has reached the floor, close off the bleeder screw and have them pump up the brakes again. After 2 to 3 pumps, have them hold pressure on the brake pedal once again and open up the bleeder screw. Repeat this procedure until no more air comes out of the caliper and you have only clean fluid. Once you get to that point, close off the bleeder screw and top off the master cylinder with clean fluid to make sure it's full. Let's get the wheels back on. Put on all 6 of your lug nuts, and then in a cross pattern, torque them to 140 foot-pounds. 140 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. Here we go. And it's always a good idea to double check them. This time you don't have to go in a cross pattern though. All right, now take it for a road test.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.